What is going on, everybody, and welcome back to another Yu-Gi-Oh! Sevens episode review. Today, guys, we are going to be going over episode 39 of Yu-Gi-Oh! Sevens, the final episode of the Goha 6 Elementary arc, or Goha 6 arc, whatever you want to call it. Honestly, it's still the same no matter what way you say it. But this is the final episode in that arc, and that is what we're going to be going over. That is all that is important. And I'm very excited to get into this episode with you guys. So, without further ado, let's not waste any more time, and let's get right into it. So, what were my thoughts on this episode? I did like this episode, and I'm really glad that I was able to enjoy this episode. They definitely made sure they saved their best two episodes for last. After what I felt like was a very big struggle for them for the last probably like 4 episodes, well, now 5 episodes ago at this point, from 34 to 37, I felt like it was kind of like a down point for them, but they definitely picked themselves back up in these last two episodes. I really did enjoy this episode. This episode continued off from where we left off in the last episode, where Yuga's overrode in her ex it was like X worm or something like that. I can't remember what it was called. It was, I don't know. I can't really remember her maximum card that well, but they're colliding with each other. Their cards are disintegrating. They're kind of in the battle to kind of determine like whose card is going to disintegrate first, because that will determine like whoever's card disintegrates first will take the damage. And if Yuga takes this damage, he'll end up losing. If Asana takes this damage, I do believe they did state that she would lose this duel as well. So this goes to the point of who is going to lose first? Whose monster is going to disintegrate first? Well, both of them end up disintegrating at the same time. Kaizo counted it as a draw, so none of them took damage for it. So this now leads them in a situation where their maximum cards no longer exist. They cannot be summoned back in the field. They basically just got banished this episode. They do not exist anymore. So now they have to go and duel without either of them using maximum cards, which is very interesting to say the least, because, you know, I feel like a lot of people have been waiting to see maximums, because maximums have been a card that has not really been seen that much other than the main antagonist. Like, Neil played it both times in a duel, but when we saw it in the Yuga-Neil duel, they used it the entire time, or at least Neil used this the entire time. Yuga ended up having to send his back to his deck, but was able to get it out again later on during the duel. But now we get into the situation of this duel, where, and I do like that it's different, because I felt like I was worried that it was going to be the same thing where it was just her that might have been able to protect her monster or something like that, or someone was able to protect their monster and be the case. But now it goes to a point where their maximums don't even exist anymore. So now they have to duel without their maximums. And that's basically where the rest of this episode goes, is that duel, and then we actually learn some backstory. In fact, I would say most of this episode was the backstory, because actually this duel for this episode was only two turns. We got one turn for Asana, and then we got one turn for Yuga. So let's kind of go into that. So Asana goes into her turn. She's able to make a very big play. She's able to get out of her other ace monster, the first ace monster that we saw her use in their first duel, that Bill Dragon monster, and she gets another one to the field. And after doing some combos and using some effects of her cards, she is able to get enough attack points of her monster thanks to summoning her monster, and with the field spell, getting its attack points to go up, and then getting another monster in the field and able to raise that monster's attack points to, thanks to the field spell. It gives her enough attack points to be able to wipe out Yuga's remaining life points. So they go for a frontal assault, but Yuga is able to survive on 600 life points thanks to two trap cards. One summoning his monster, and the other one I think one was able to like mitigate damage. I could be wrong on that one, but he was able to use two trap cards to be able to survive this turn. He goes in his turn, and he's able to get out his new ace monster after using his Creepot, using its effect to get another Creepot onto the field, tributes the two monsters to get his Mirror Invader onto the field, which I'm going to say this is probably my favorite monster of Yuga's in this entire series. I think it looks really, really cool. I really do love this ace monster a lot, actually. It's kind of funny though, actually. This card, I don't know why, for some reason, this card reminds me of like, or it kind of looks like a Gem Knight monster. I don't know why it makes me feel like that, but I feel like this would be something that a Gem Knight user, which I think her name was Matsumi from Yu-Gi-Oh! 5. She was the one that used it, so I feel like this would be a card that she would use in her Gem Knight deck. I don't know, it just really looks like that, but he's able to get that Ace monster. But before we go on the effects, I do want to explain something before that. I just kind of wanted to kind of explain that real quick, because before she even went on to the assault, R6 starts crashing. Like you see like oil dripping from it. It looks like it's about to burst. You even see later on that a part of the machine actually pops up of the thing, and you just see all of the like cranks inside of the machine actually like running. You can actually see like the insides of the machine. And this is where the cat is let out of the bag, and this is where we're starting to get some more on the backstory of why Asana is even doing this in the first place. So we do find out, because obviously we know they don't like modifying their stuff. That is their big like no policy for them. So in order to make sure their products or like their machinery can stay the same, Goha made a deal with Asana that if she's able to get rid of rush duels, he will supply the parts that they need to fix their machines. Which I will say, it's a pretty scummy thing to do, which also this is kind of just like what business is like. He's not just going to give away the parts for free. You have to work for it, and that's basically his way. Not only does he get what he wants of destroying rush duels, but it gives her the parts. But Asana kind of has a conflict with this because she enjoys rush duels. I mean, this is clearly obvious. Like, she didn't, like, it didn't have to even be stated that she liked rush duels. It was clear since episode 32. Like, she was enjoying that duel with Yuga. And heck, even in this duel, she's not serious about it at all. Like, she doesn't even care about the stakes. She just fights to have fun. Although she did say during this episode that if you get in the Mutsuba, I believe that's how you pronounce the name, I could be completely wrong on this, but you mess with the family's name, you're going to pay for it. You're going to be sorry. That's basically what she said. I don't know if that's the exact words, but she basically warned Yuga that if you get in her family's way, then, or like interfere with their whole like system that they work with, she is going to destroy him. So that's where you kind of like see like she really does this for her family, but she does have her own conflicts because she does enjoy rush duels. So that does put it in an interesting spot. And we kind of also learn about the Mutsuba family machine group, as they were the ones that actually built Goha City. We actually see a flashback of them actually building the city until Goha Corporation or Goha actually was able to take over because of technology growing, that to the point where these machineries that they were using were just really not as useful as they were anymore. Like, you have this technology that's able to do so much more that they just became irrelevant at that point, and kind of this new foundation was created, which was Goha Corp. And I'm gonna say this, I feel really stupid because I don't know how I didn't notice this. I noticed it back in the last episode, and I feel dumb for not mentioning it, but I guess this is actually the more appropriate episode to explain it in. If you look at the G that they normally have in it, it's the same one as the one that you see on the top of the Goa Corporation sign. But the difference is that you see this red, yellow, and green kind of like feather-like thing in front of it, or like behind it. Doesn't that look familiar? That is the Masudova, and I feel so bad if I'm pronouncing that name wrong. That's her family's company logo in like behind Goa Corp, kind of symbolizing that Goa Corp ended up taking over the Mutsuba family's like group of what they ended up doing, because they became like this new power. They were able to like rebuild Goha even further, and was basically able to advance it, and they basically became over it. So the symbolism there was kind of messed up as well, but that happens. Like when a corporation is able to outbeat you and you're just not able to really keep up with them, it ends up having to be the case. It happens in the real life world for us as well. So that's just the thing that happens. So now Yuga has to duel against Asana with her grudge that if she loses this duel, she cannot fix her machinery at all. And once her machinery is destroyed, once her R6 gets destroyed, she cannot rebuild it anymore. She won't have the parts to do it. In fact, now thinking about it, wouldn't have had it either, because Galliant fought basically for the same thing as well. Because remember, back in episode 30, I believe it was 33, his machine ended up getting destroyed. So he can't repair that anymore unless Asana wins this duel. So she's not just fighting for herself, she's fighting for everyone else as well. So that puts an interesting twist onto the duel. And this also kind of just shows like Asana is not evil in this case. I felt like I was a little bit upset that she wasn't really felt more like an antagonist, but honestly, after kind of learning a little bit more about this, I do change my mind. I do think I'm perfectly fine with this, and I was fine with it either way. But I think I'm a lot better with this. That I actually do kind of feel bad for her. Like you have to kind of feel bad for her because she just wants to keep the old ways that she's like basically grew up with, and this is her only chance to be able to save it. So that's basically what this duel is. And if she has to get rid of something that she was enjoying like rush duels, that's what she's willing to take. And obviously, and honestly, I will say this, one of my favorite quotes from Rook this episode, which finally Rook kind of was toned down on the stupidityness, although he kind of had that at the beginning where he was trying to like bring back the cards even though they were kind of disintegrated. But he makes a statement to where like, Yuga and I, like, you see Gakuto and Roman kind of feel bad for them, but Rook and Yuga kind of have a difference in this because they want to become the duel king. And in order to do that, they need to keep rush duels. So basically, they have to win the duel themselves to keep rush duels so that they can fulfill their dreams. But Asana is fighting for the same thing as well. And this actually puts Yuga in a situation where what is he going to choose? Is he going to choose becoming the dual king? Because, and this is a very fair argument, because remember back in episode 25 when we saw that flashback and Yuga kept trying to deny taking their ID accounts because that can ruin their dreams? Wouldn't Yuga be doing the same thing as well? And Rook kind of was noticing that as well. And that's where I feel like that's where his best moments are as well. It's just observing a duel. I feel like that's where his stronger point is at and where his stupidityness goes down. So, very good line from Rook. I really did like that. But going back into the duel, this is where things get very interesting. And I kind of went a little bit too deep into this, and it kind of hurt me when I went into this. So let me kind of explain this turn real quick. Yuga is able to get his new ace monster on the field, activates his effect where it can target the monsters with the same type as its. By the way, he can choose 3 cards, and his monster can gain 100 attack points times its total level times 100. So before he can actually fully get the effect, Asana activates a trap to where it makes it to where Yuga can't attack with a monster type that she declares. She declares machine, so Yuga can't attack with any machine monsters. But Yuga is able to activate a spell card to change its typing to spellcaster, is now able to use the effect because with it being original machine, he has no targets, which I'll get into in a second. So he changes it so it's spellcaster, so he can. So he chooses Sevens Road Magician, he chooses another monster that I can't really remember, and Aqua Sorcerer, and is able to gain 1600 attack points because Sevens Road Magician is 7, that one monster is 5, and Sorcerer is 4. So is able to gain 1600 attack points, uses another card to be able to have his monster gain attack points equal to Asana's built dragon's attack points, giving it 6,900 attack points, enough to be able to wipe her life points out in one blow. He goes on an attack and actually is able to beat her dragon and end up winning the duel before her machine actually ends up exploding at at the process of this as well, and also kind of having a conflict with that because he stands there for a minute, then he smiles and goes in and for the attack. They all have this like proud cheer. Go, Asana and her group have this loud cheer after trying to like hold the whole machinery together. Like they were basically they used all their brute muscle to do it. You saw Caterpillar using his big old tools to kind of keep things together. You see Duff Rap out of nowhere just shot a feather to kind of stop the cog inside of the machinery to kind of stop it from malfunctioning, and then they just basically tried to hold it together for one last blow. Asana takes the damage, R6 gets destroyed, and they end up flying backwards. Luckily Asana doesn't get hurt because Galley and Chevalier basically became pillars for her so that she didn't just fly into the wall. So Asana ends up losing. But the thing that I notice with this is that why would Yuga activate this effect? Because I feel like this duel could have played out so differently, but I feel like the writers had to write it like this so that it could actually work the way they wanted to do this. Because think about this for this scenario real quick. Take out of the equation that Asana didn't have that trap card and Yuga didn't have the spell card to change his monster type. What was he going to do? Because he was then now be forced to target monsters in his graveyard that were in machine types. The only machine he played this entire duel was his Overroad. And guess what? That card technically doesn't exist anymore because it disintegrated. So how would Yuga be able to use an effect? You can't use an effect if you cannot target it. And also, the fact, and I will say this, Asana has been a very smart duelist into this point. This is probably the biggest mistake I think I've seen Asana ever do in this series, because she activates her trap card so early. She activates it way too early because Yuga didn't even start targeting monsters in the graveyard. He just says, I'm going to activate my effect, explains the effect, but before even targeting, she then uses the trap card. Now, I understand, like, through a process of, like, thinking about this, like, maybe he has some way to do this, so just in case, she decides to make sure his monster cannot attack. But that obviously doesn't work because his monster was able to change into a spellcaster, which is funny enough. The mask comes off and it kind of looks like Sevens Road Magician in like this full like silver armor. I don't know if anyone saw it as well. I don't know. The face just reminded me of Sevens Road Magician for some reason. I don't know why, but it kind of does suck because he can't have that target in his graveyard. If those two cards didn't exist, he can't win in that turn. Now, and this is just a little bit fun fact that I ended up learning, Yuga's would have actually had the more benefit from the machine monsters because of the fact that the monsters that he targeted had 1600 attack points. If he targeted his Overroad monsters, he would have gained 1700 attack because the left like part of it is level 4, the right part is level 3, and then the middle part is level 10. You add those together, you get 17. 17 times 100 is 1700. Or 17 times 100 is 1700. Excuse me, I did that completely wrong. So, funny enough, he actually would have gained more benefit from the machines if those was in his graveyard. And maybe I'm looking a little bit too much into it. It doesn't affect the duel, it's just something that I really didn't notice. But I don't know. Did you guys notice that? What do you guys think about the cards being, like, disintegrated? Because I don't like when duels get tampered like this. I really do not like that. I like duels that are just mano a mano and just make sense, like, of them going back and forth. Like, all these, like, things that happen would actually happen if you had played this yourself. Cards would not disintegrate if this happened in real life. Now, I know this is just a show, this happens, and that's why I don't think it's the biggest deal. I just wish it was a little bit more realistic, and to the point where his Overroad monsters should still be counted, but I understand they don't exist anymore, so I will let it go. But that's just something that I ended up noticing. And also another thing with this duel, let me know if you guys think this is better than the Yuga Neo Round 2 duel. If I had to say it, I do not think that this duel beats either round one or round two of Yuga versus Neil. The thing was is that I feel like there wasn't enough back and forth to really get into the level of Yuga and Neil. And maybe it's just because they needed two more turns, which I think they might have been able to squeeze it in if they got rid of the opening and the ending. I feel like that could have worked, but I don't know. That might be far stretching it. You probably would have to cut a little of the backstory a little bit. Maybe you cut a couple of seconds off of the monsters attacking. I really have no idea how you would be able to fit two turns, but it's possible. It really is, and I do think you can still explain a lot of stuff. And I kind of said, like, I felt like there was a good chance that something could get shafted into this, and I feel like the extra turns could be a thing that been shafted, but maybe they were planning on this being a 5-turn duel either way, and they just added the story in afterwards. Obviously, I'm not the one writing the show. I have no idea. Bridge is the one writing the show, so obviously they have this plan beforehand, so maybe they already planned this to be a 5-turn duel and added the rest for the story. I have really no idea, so that's just the way I'd look at it. But I don't think it's better than either of those two. I think the back and forth between the second duel, I think, was just phenomenal. I thought it was definitely the best back and forth that we had. This duel just felt like a normal duel to me. I don't know. And that's not saying that's a bad thing. I mean, it was a longer duel, which I've always said I'm going to like the longer duels because you get to see more of the deck. But it was just Yuga, because I can basically explain the turn right now. Yuga sets his cards. Asana does basically a Neil turn, tries to OTK him, doesn't work, gets her maximum out. Same thing when Yuga gets his maximum out, maximum monster on the field, tries to destroy hers, doesn't end up working. Both monsters end up getting disintegrated. Then they just go for their ace monsters. She gets hers, able to deal enough damage to get him very low, and he goes into his turn, gets his ace monster out, wins. Like, that's basically the whole duel in a nutshell. But honestly, I wish there was maybe a little bit more back and forth, and maybe you could have got that with two more turns. I don't know really what much it would have done, but that's just something I kind of wish they did a little bit more on. And the first one is also just another one to, hard to beat because of just the shocking way that ended up happening. Seeing the maximum for the first time, just seeing this horrifying dragon-like monster, a very ginormous monster on the field, and just obliterating Yuga in just one turn. Like, that's not something that you can beat very easily in terms of intense and awesomeness right there. But I do think this is better than the first duel, and I still did really enjoy this duel. I thought they definitely saved their last duel for their best duel for last. I really do believe that. But Yuga's able to win, R6 gets destroyed, but Yuga smiles, walks past Asana, and we see like this like kind of tannish rock in the way. He hits it a little bit, disintegrates. Then you find this like lab-like area, like it looks like an old lab that no one has used in a while. And they see this big old machinery on there. And Asana realizes immediately that this is R0, the original machine that they used. Like, it was the first ever machine that the Masuda family actually created. And she just thinks this is awesome. She even starts bursting into tears. And this is where one of my favorite lines from Yuga comes, as he shows Asana that this machine had modifications. You can see that this thing has been tampered with a lot. And then you just got this nice quote from Yuga, and I'm not going to be able to quote it exactly, but basically saying that, like, modifying is not a bad thing. You know, you're going to go through trial and error when you're creating something, but all you have to do is keep trying. You keep modifying it and modifying it and modifying it until you're able to get it work. And heck, if you want to try and improve it, you modify it some more to the point of where you can make it even better. Modifying stuff is not bad at all. In fact, it probably is the best thing to do, because if you get something not to work and you wanted to use these pieces, like, is that it? You're just not going to try it anymore? No, you try it again, you modify it a little bit more to see if you can maybe, like, figure out a way to put this stuff together, maybe modify it a little bit more to, like, make it better structured. I have no idea. Maybe it gets to work, but you realize that maybe you can make it a little bit better, so you modify it a little bit more, and it's probably one of the best creations you ever did. Like, think of Yuga. He has to go through trial and error every time he creates one of his roads. Like, he has this experience himself, so definitely the best character to explain this. One of my favorite quotes from Yuga, so I really did like this scene as well. But Asana accepts this afterwards, and she accepts that modifying stuff is not that bad at all. In fact, they actually get out of the underground, and Yuga is able to fix R6. We actually do see Asana's grandfather in this episode as well, kind of saying, like, oh, you're really good when it comes to this kind of stuff. And then you had Galliant actually asking for him to kind of modify his stuff as well. Like, they're really into the modifying of their machines now. Asana kind of thanks him afterwards about the whole thing, and basically they just become friends after this. Like, it was a really good moment. But then the final scene to end off this episode, we see Mr. Goa at the desk, we hear what ends up happening, and all Mr. Goa says is like, this needs to be settled with immediately. So now it seems like he's now going to be taking some action going into this, and I am very excited to see where this is going on. I'm not going to explain much of what I think is going to be happening in the next arc, because I do an end of arc series on this channel where I go over the last arc, then predict what the next arc is going to be, but I think we might all know where this is going at. But with that being said, that is going to be it, guys, for this episode review. The last episode review for this arc. Not the last video, because we still got the end of arc video to do, where we cover everything else from all the characters in this arc to maybe a little bit more that I feel like need to be mentioned. Briefly talking about the duels and the episodes all together and giving it a final ranking. Because definitely I'm not giving a final ranking, because I'm going to say this, I definitely have a lot of thinking going with this arc. And one of my biggest things that I have to really think about before that video is, do I think this arc is better than the maximum arc? Because I'm going to be honest, and I'll just say this right away, I don't think this arc is a 7 or higher, because I think there was just too many flaws in this arc that it kind of doesn't want me to really put it that high, but I don't think it's like in the levels of like a 2, 1, or 0. I don't think it was garbage at all. I do think there was some really good qualities to this. If I would have to say like a good balance to start off with, and maybe what you guys would be expecting going into that end of arc, where my ranking might waver towards, just say it's probably going to be around a 3 to 6. I really do have to think about this, and do I think this is worse than the maximum arc? And I want to remind you guys, if you guys didn't watch that video, the maximum arc was ranked pretty low. I believe I ranked it a 4 out of 10, so yeah, I was not as impressed with that arc, and now I have to determine, do I think this arc is better than it, or do I think it's worse than it? And go from there. But that is going to be something that I discuss in another video where I will be more focused on that. But guys, that is going to be it for this episode review. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know what your guys' thoughts on this episode was. Did you like this episode? Were you in the middle of this episode, or did you not like this episode? What did you guys think of the duel? Did you think it was better than the Neil duel, or did you think it was not? Do you think it didn't beat the Neil duel? And with that, guys, that is going to be it. And also what you think of the backstory with the Masuda family. But with that being said, thank you guys so much for watching. And until next time, guys, take care and have yourselves a great rest of your day.